Hello, hello there.
Hello. You're with us from the start, Azril. That makes me happy. I would have been happy otherwise, but... Okay, we should get going. It's 1:15. We have about 45 minutes, maybe a bit more. We can wrap it up afterwards, Azril. So we're going to start this off. And I'm just going to tell everybody welcome to the Café con Paulo Freire podcast. And especially welcome to you, Asta, for being part of this. You're from the Climate Students. So I'm going to say something about myself and also about the podcast, very brief. I'm Daniel. I work here at CEMUS with education and outreach. And CEMUS is the Center for Environment and Development Studies here at Uppsala University in Uppsala, Sweden. And this is our third episode. It's been very interesting to do this in a podcast format. It makes it more focused on the guests we have as part of the conversation. We have a couple of more people online as well, so we see, and some people here as well. So we'll see how we can take it to the next level and maybe also integrate all of this. And Azril, you're in a car somewhere in Spain, traveling towards Valencia, I think.
On my way to Sevilla.
To Sevilla, yeah. I'm not a good listener. Yes. Sevilla, but it's still Spain at least. Yeah.
It is Spain, yes.
Yeah, it's Spain. That's good.
And yeah, what can I say about me? We have been developing this program since about 3 years now, almost 3 years. The Coffee with Paulo Freire format we took from Porto Alegre, from Fernanda, who works with children, teacher, and she's also environmental, well, a poet, and she has been our godmother. And lately we're doing the podcast. So my background is as an agricultural engineer, social scientist, but been teaching, doing research since 1967. That makes me today 82 years young. And yeah, I'm glad that we have today climate activists, climate students, because we met at the Forum Toriet, Fridays for the Future, and I'm very glad that we can have an intergenerational dialogue between younger activists, especially in the academic environment, but not only.
So basically, Asta, just a brief introduction of you at the Climate Students, maybe also about what got you engaged in these issues around climate, but maybe other things as well.
Yes. I'm in my third year in my Bachelor's of Peace and Development Studies here at the university. And yeah, that's what I do. Now I've been studying at CEMUS, the climate leadership course. Yeah, I should sit a bit more closely maybe. I've been studying the climate leadership course here at CEMUS. And the Climate Students is an organization, is an international organization now, but it actually started here in Uppsala at SLU. Where students wanted to help the universities reduce their emissions, to also, follow the Paris Accords and Agenda 2030. So basically, what we want is for universities between 2019 and 2023 to reduce their emissions by 15% each year, and then for by 2030 be net zero emitters. And what got me engaged, I always have been, for as long as I can remember, been interested in environment and climate change, and when you do something about it, I feel like I get very anxious if I don't contribute with my knowledge, and with what I feel I can contribute to the world. And with the universities, we see it as a huge opportunity to spread awareness throughout societies, as universities are hubs of knowledge, and they educate a large proportion of the population. So if universities can, as our slogan is, practice what you teach, if they can do that, then that's those values, those ethical values and sustainable practices spread throughout society.
Great. And it's also that students have a unique role within the university. You could say that about every category, but students also has this role that you can't really ignore what the students think and what the students are engaged in at a university. But it also depends on how many students, of course, that are engaged or what kind of suggestions you have for changes at the university as well. But and being also here at Uppsala University for quite a long time, there's been certain issues where students have been very involved, but Uppsala University has not seen this kind of student movement around these issues on a larger scale. Maybe that's ahead of us in the future, maybe, hopefully. Yes. I also want to say something more about the topic and also about framing. Myself, I worked a long time at CEMUS and also, as I said, in Uppsala University, and also CEMUS has been involved in different projects and different discussions at the university on how the university can maybe do things differently or start new initiatives. So we've been part of the active student participation project. There was also an earlier project around sustainable development and how that should be integrated in education, or should it be a separate course that you take as a student? And we've been part of other international networks and part of that discussion at the university. And when you work with an issue a long time, you might have also, you get a feeling that you want more change to happen than you're seeing, if I'm phrasing it diplomatically. So then it's easy to, over time, become stuck in a certain issue, or you become stuck in a form of maybe passive bitterness is a fancy word for it. But I listened to this podcast, Climate Emotions, I think it's called, where they also talked about bitterness and anger, and they talk about climate emotions a lot. So I thought that kind of got me the idea, well, what if we turn it around? What if we kind of sort of workshop this and start to think about, it might be very practical and very like easy things to suggest or think about that could be done here, but it also could be done at the university on a larger scale or another part of the university. And also try to just think of, well, if we were the ones deciding, or if we can think of like, this would be easy ways or more visionary big things in changing the university. And then we don't have to describe the history of how Uppsala University has not been so good at changing or changing for the better. And I divided this very practically in the physical environment, the campus areas, resources, education, and research. And outreach kind of goes into everything and is a bit more vague as well. So I think those three categories will be enough for the 40 minutes we have left. And I think also a lot of student projects here at CMS, but also students in general, that might be the same for the climate students, are engaged in kind of the physical resources, travel, those kind of issues within the university. So from that kind of framing, are there specific things you feel especially engaged in, or the climate students that you've been working? And this kind of also connects a part to the Uppsala University environmental plan, which is also being updated again. So.
Yeah, so definitely a huge part of the university's emissions come from transportation. And for that, we're looking into looking again at the plan for next year, because the environmental coordinators are starting the process in the beginning of next year. And we want to learn from past mistakes and make it make the future plan better. And I mean, a problem with student organizations in general is that we have a lot of what do you call it, turnover, or there's a lot of students coming and going, so sometimes you don't have that knowledge you need. So we're looking at that again to really revisit it, make it a proper critique of the plan. So personally, I'm more invested in food and food systems. And the climate students are launching next year a campaign for more plant-based foods at the universities. So yeah, that's something that I'm more invested in, and that I guess Klimatstudenterna has been working, or the climate students have been working on for the past month a bit.
And one of the very concrete things we talked about just in a small part of the episode last time was also this theme of campus gardens and gardens as part of the learning process, and how to engage both students, but also researchers, but also citizens here in Uppsala. So that for me at least would be an easy way to set that as a goal, but also maybe fund it. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be very expensive, but you would set like a goal. We have one campus garden now, just outside of here.
Yeah.
Maybe next year we should have 3,
Yeah.
5, and then you just kind of figure out and ask them how much did this cost, what kind of land is requirement, how as a minimum of people do you need involved. That would be a very easy way of actually then having something very physical, very concrete, but also that could be used in education and research.
Yeah. And that's a big part of what we want as well. We think that access to the environmental coordinators and the environmental group at the university is very difficult. Can't find anything. Like we've been with the climate students, been here for our meetings at CMS Library, but there's no really other hub for environmental issues that can be talked about otherwise in the university right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, campus gardens can definitely be a part of that.
Yeah. And that also, I mean, today almost being 20 degrees Celsius minus, it reminds us also that the indoor spaces for, I mean, the majority of the academic year would also be something that you could develop, and having kind of collaborative spaces that, again, doesn't have to be super expensive. It's not super advanced to set up.
No.
And same as library is a kind of model, but there's other projects also. We worked with the Uppsala Collaboratoriet, which was part of a research project, and it was a free space for students, organizations, anybody basically to use for events or meetings or other things. So that would also be something that would be, you could do the same thing. You say that we have one space, or maybe there's 2 or 3 of them that we don't know. And then you can just say we should have 5 or 10 next year, and how much would this cost? And also talk to people running these spaces now. That's easy. But also talking about food, because I remember there was a project around having fridges where you could leave food that you weren't using, or I don't know. I don't think it was leftovers, but have you heard anything more about that? And if any of the campus areas have that?
I haven't heard about that. Might have to do something with Bruce Food Club, because they're more for saving food and food waste. We're more like, we want to try to focus our resources on making the university lower its emissions. But of course, food is a way of doing that. But no, I haven't heard about that project. It sounds really interesting, though.
Yeah, and it was a very also easy idea. And I think the idea was not necessarily to buy a lot of new fridges, because then you're going on the resource end. It might be worth it, though, in the long run. But I think it was using also fridges that might be on the end of their life, and you like buy new fridges here anyways, but I throw away the others. But I think it also connects to other ideas around having, if people bring food that are nearing their end to a fridge like that, you could have like a soup lunch or something like that. As also a social event to actually then use something. Because if you have a fridge and then you just have things that lie there and nobody's using it, that doesn't really do any good. Travel, is there, do you within the climate students have like an ongoing concrete discussion around that, or any dialogue with the university?
We have some dialogue. We meet with the environmental coordinators monthly, but the university wants to lower their travel related emissions by 30% from 2019 to 2023, which they have in 2022 they'd reduced their emissions by 44%. So that's, it's good for their goal, but it's not what we want. We want them to reduce it by 15% every year. So that would be over all of their sectors about a 70% reduction, or a 60-70% reduction.
Yeah, and also if you compare 2019 and 2022, you have a very lucky period if you're looking at the reductions, because it's a pandemic, and the pandemic, we might have said it ended here, or regulations concerning the pandemic ended in February 2022. But for the rest of the world, it took more than a year after that before things were starting up, and also international conferences. So if you might compare another year.
Exactly.
It would
they also they acknowledge that in the revision, like the environmental revision that they have to do by law. And they say that, the beginning of 2020 was only a year and a half ago, but that was my second term of university, and I remember things like shutting down in the beginning and having Zoom again. So yeah, definitely a lot of those emissions. But I'm looking forward to see what actually happened now at the end of 2023.
Yeah. And we also heard rumors that certain departments actually pay all the train travel that anybody employed at their department would do. So you pay for like I think you pay for hotels and air travel.
Yeah.
But if you're going by train, that is not going to cost you or the projects that you're working with anything extra. So it's like a joint collective fund that they have.
That's really good.
Which would also seem like a good idea for the university.
Yeah.
Which is again something you can quite easily calculate from. You can just do a summary of train travel and kind of get a number on it. Is there other things with how the campus areas are constructed and resource use? And also I'm thinking of the mental and like psychological environment of the campus areas or the classrooms, for example. Is that might be more periphery to climate students?
It's a bit more periphery for us right now, I think, but university has things for their energy use or like a set goal, like we want to reduce it by this much. They don't have it for like things that they purchase. They just have, we want to reduce, but not by how much. And I think that like definitely there should be a way to make people from different campuses be able to meet in a location, which like we suggest that the sustainability office should be more transparent and should be like glass doors, you know, to where they sit and you can meet people and you can see the different student organizations at the university as well. Like maybe you're interested in food waste and then you can join Bruce Food Club. Or maybe you're interested in what the university does and you can join Klimatstudenterna or the climate students, or Fridays for Future, or you know. But yeah, the classrooms, I don't know if we thought a lot about how they're like integrated with nature.
And it might connect more to education, so we can come back to that as well, because there's a reoccurring theme we've had in the podcast and previous sessions as well. I'm also thinking about it. I listened to this really interesting presentation, it was like an hour, from I think Indiana University, and how they during the pandemic had developed a lot of outdoor spaces for students to study, but also outdoor spaces for students to sit with their computer and have online learning. So it was a fairly, they had worked for it for a long time, but it was also during the pandemic this kind of grew quite a lot. So that seems also a Uppsala University specific thing that could be developed a lot more. And again, it doesn't have to be resource heavy and everything, but it would be interesting to see how Uppsala University could use the green areas that they have to also expand kind of the where you can sit and study as a student, but also where you could have classes, other things as well, or have meeting places, kind of like same as others. Okay, that is kind of a segue into education. Should we jump into that as well? So is there anything specific that the climate students are working on when it comes to education specifically?
Do you mean like what the university teaches, like the programs, or?
Yeah, and it's basically the question of like, should sustainability and climate issues be integrated in all courses, or should there be like a required course or several required courses for all students at the university, and all sorts of other things that we haven't thought about?
Yeah, it's not something that we actively work on right now. Maybe I have my own personal opinions, but we believe that the university needs to take their share of responsibility, as we believe that like institutional change is mandatory if we want to meet the Agenda 2030 and the Paris thing below 1.5 degrees. So I think that, like, personally, maybe at the university there shouldn't be demand for just learning about climate change, depending on what course. Like I've done some very random courses, and it's like, but I think that it should be integrated in all the different campuses. But we think more about what the campuses do to make it easier for students to choose sustainable alternatives. What do their like coffee machines look like? Do they have plastic, or like what kind of cups do they have? Do they have plant-based milk? Does it make it easy for students to choose an alternative? Can they bike there? You know, Uppsala is very friendly in that way compared to many other cities. But we don't focus so much on education, as we like really try to help the university just lower their emissions from what the university pays for.
And what you're describing sounds almost like a course that could be a for credit course, how to make your like local study environment or your department more environmentally and climate friendly, for example. But I'm also thinking of the University of Barcelona, where they had a student movement, student protests, and then the university they developed this course on climate that is required for all students before you graduate, or it's required at the start. I'm not sure about that. But it seems also that, and it should be said also that there's a lot of students, a lot of teachers, a lot of researchers that are genuinely interested in all of these topics, and they're trying to do all they can within their courses or educational programs, bachelor, master programs. So there's a lot of engagement, I think, but it's not always easy. Just like, how do you integrate this in a meaningful way and have also your established kind of a subject or thing if you're teaching chemistry, that is the main thing.
Yeah.
Sustainability kind of comes on top of it.
Yeah.
It would be interesting also for climate students and other students kind of getting together in a kind of same fashion also and trying to identify what are the courses, programs missing at Uppsala University that Uppsala could start. That also would be, in all cases, I would guess, successful programs when it comes to recruiting students and finding kind of basics to work with.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like long term, finding those programs that could help with like climate activism and involvement. I think something that like we kind of push for now is, or that we want more of, which we feel like is a very easy thing to do, is just to host more lectures or like host more guest lectures about climate change at the institutions. Every institution basically, or every like apartment building has something that regards environment and climate. It's not that difficult then to have guest lectures at the different departments to make it easier for students to get involved.
Azril, you have your hand up.
Okay. So it's two different levels. One is academic and has to do with research, education, which you just dealt with, and then with the resources, the physical space, the campus resources. The other area is organizational.
I think that was we heard most of it, Azril. You were sounding partly as out of space coming in. But I think we got kind of a question in there. Go ahead and comment.
So the question was how we can like think about these in different levels, or what was kind of the end?
I think what I picked up was like both the interdisciplinary part of it. How do you then break these boundaries, and how do you create something maybe that actually creates change in a sense? And we talk about the university here in a more practical and visionary aspect, which then risks becoming naive. But that is what we're really here for in the SEMAS context is also changing not only the university, but the society, but also the world in a big global kind of aspect. So I think that's kind of the question, if that was a question.
Maybe that how we can change the world through the education, like what you talked about.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. So like in Swedish mandatory school, you have to learn about climate change. That's one of the parts. But at the university, we have many international students. Maybe that hasn't been a part of their academic background. So like, I think it's very important, and it's really interesting discussing these philosophical aspects. We at Klimatstudenterna maybe kind of think more like we want to have the action before we and think about these kind of things on the side. I think that if we had everyone do a mandatory course in climate change, perhaps we would get more. I don't see anything bad climate related to that. We probably would have more climate engagement. But again, there's no as a student who's usually relying on sources, I don't have a good source for why that would be at the moment. But as long as we're not stagnating in our education and listening to the students, listening to new research, I think that's a way forward.
And I'm also realizing now when we're talking about integrating in education or in educational programs and courses, and then like a standalone course that would be an introduction. But I think also from SEMA's kind of being stuck in and it's great that we have an A and B course and we have a lot of international courses, but that also means that there's no way to write a bachelor thesis at CMOS. But that means a lot of students go on to other subjects and departments, and then because there's an openness to sustainability and climate and everything, so then they write their thesis as it would kind of be writing a thesis at CMOS because it's an open topic, and they can also in most cases relate the kind of department they're at to sustainability in a lot of interesting ways. So I think also maybe there's more things happening that we know of.
Yeah, and that's a problem, right? Because at the university, if we want people to like quickly change their lifestyles and for the university to change, we need people to know about what's going on at the university.
Yeah.
That's a big part of like Uppsala University being a very conservative in the way it works and functions, having a lot of problems communicating with students. Putting that pressure on organizations like the climate students to a group of unpaid students to communicate to all students at 60,000 students at Uppsala University. It's quite a lot to do, and if students feel that the university is engaged in these topics and that the university has a lot of hosts and lectures and themes regarding this, more students probably would be involved and also know about climate students and the climate work.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, in a lot of cases, we're talking about things that we know very little about, but we assume a lot.
Yeah.
And that goes also, I just start trying to understand what is going on at CMOS. And then you think CMOS is fairly small, and I've been here a long time, but also if you're working with your first course, like you were doing, it's like, but it's still, there's so many different things happening, even at this very small scale. And preparing for this, I found this and this active student participation companion, the book they wrote at the end of that project. And it has this Uppsala University in brief with numbers and everything. And then you kind of get this, like, and this is this is 5 or over 5 years ago, but it's like, there's like 6,000-7,000 people working at the university. Then, as you said, 50,000-60,000 students. The budget is around, I think, around 4 or 5 or 4 billion Swedish kronas.
I'm not sure.
And then you can kind of all the campus areas and all the square meters and total buildings and everything. And then you have the outside space that we talked about. So it is kind of a society within a society.
Yeah.
So there's, and maybe that would also be an interesting way, both for you, but also CMOS, to just look at what is being done out there and maybe catalog and try to highlight certain things as well. Maybe that's the university should do that.
Yeah, so that's what we're actually doing right now. We've emailed all 49 institutions at the university and asked about if they have a climate plan and what it looks like. Because currently in the environmental plan, not the climate plan, the university does not have a climate, just an environmental plan. Currently, it says that the vice chancellor is ultimately responsible, but the people who are actually responsible in practice is the head of departments. They're responsible for implementing everything. And I want to say surprisingly, but not really surprisingly, a lot of the head of departments don't know that they're responsible for it. And so we're looking into what they're doing and we're trying to help them, because that's what we're supposed to be, a help function, but also putting pressure on the university to find out what they're doing. And some of them have been doing really well at lowering their emissions. Some haven't at all. So we think that obviously the university should be doing this work and lowering these at institutions, because often the head of departments are only there for about 3 years, I think, and they don't always have leadership experience either, which is crucial for this kind of work. We're looking into it now, but it's a messy path. Yeah.
Usually you're a great teacher and researcher, in some cases just a great researcher, but you're a beginner at leadership, or just the practicalities of the whole thing.
And it's like, how is the head of department for like Scandinavian languages supposed to have the knowledge to reduce their emissions? It's, or like for bioscience or whatever, like there's so many different departments, and all head of departments don't have the capacity to learn, or they don't have the time, or they don't have the previous experience either of knowing what to do.
And I think that it could be a lot of cataloging and just showing examples of how to do things, or like this department did this. But I think also a challenge to departments, if we focus on that level, would be if they didn't have any constraints around resources or finding teachers, what would be like one sustainability course that they would put together, a sustainability climate course they would put together that would be of use for the whole university.
Yep.
And it could be student-led, and it doesn't have to be student-led, but that would be an interesting way also. Like if you say it's 49 departments, and if we would have 49 like cases or examples or suggested courses, that would be very interesting to see how the departments would relate to that.
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm not like pointing out specifically the Department of Scandinavian Languages.
We don't want to,
because I don't know what their climate plan or anything is at the moment, or the department. That was just the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah. We just take something that is far away.
Yes, something far
from
away.
you and from us here.
Yeah.
No, I think everybody's struggling, even the ones that think they're not struggling.
Yeah.
That might be a bigger issue if you have long experience and you already think everything is great. That might be harder to get things done. But that's interesting that you're doing this cataloging and finding these contacts better, because I think in most cases, as I said, there's a lot of people that want to do more, but then how do you do that, and where do you start, basically?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's like, especially now, the climate students function completely now without financing. So it's basically just a bunch of really involved students who want the best for our university and want the departments to like make it easier for us to adapt and also change for the future, in alliance with Uppsala Council or commune as well.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just pure like, we just run out of like pure engagement for this issue. So I think the university, by like, if they for the next plan misses the opportunity to engage with us, I think that's a huge loss for them, because we carry such a lot of knowledge. The environmental office, they don't have this information about the different departments at hand. We have an Excel with everything and what every department is doing. Yeah.
That's great. So finally here, we're going to wrap up in a couple of minutes, and none of us, I'm guessing, are researchers or have that kind of practical work experience from research. But I think when we're talking about such a large university and with a lot of different topics and subjects, I think there's a lot of resources to build on when it comes to research and researchers and research groups and themes. And also not making sustainability climate about only the natural science, technological issues, since Uppsala is so big. So I think that is my only like half visionary thing of just finding and highlighting more researchers and research, but also beyond this kind of narrow framing. Of course, you can't forget about that, but I don't know if you have any other.
And that's why we're right now also focusing on plant-based foods. The average meal in Sweden is 1.8 kilograms of CO2 equivalent, and we need to be at 0.5 in order to stay below 1.5 degrees. And we should like basically be doing that right now. And you can't get that through if you want to meet like your caloric intake and your protein intake, and stay below 0.5, you can't do that while eating animal products for every meal. It's basically impossible unless it's just a little bit. But so that's where and the university for their campuses, they're responsible for catering, and they also host restaurants. That might be 1 or 2 meals that they're serving each day or 1 or 2 meals out of their employees or students. And that's quite a lot of like their carbon emissions from food intake. So that's what we need. Like, climate change is multidimensional. It affects all factors of society, and although we're focusing on transport because it's huge, and like fossil fuels, we also need to focus on these things that also impact like food systems and food.
And also connecting back to your study background in peace and conflict, we also have to build society in general, but also the university as part of that, to be able to withstand whether it's food crisis, international crisis, war, climate disasters, whatever it is. So I think there's a great overlap with that. And also Sweden during the Cold War maybe during the Second World War also had that kind of thinking and planning of how can we kind of survive the worst kind of crises. But it was also like a joint societal project that made people also, I think, in many cases come together around that issue. So, yeah. I think that's a perfect wrap. And great. Azril, you're still with us in the car. We're going to switch over to the final part of this and let you in as well. But thank you so much, Asta. We're going to let you go. And we should stay in contact with some or maybe all of these ideas. And also very interesting to see what you find from this survey and looking at what.
And if you want to find us online, we're on Instagram and Facebook most of the time.
Yep.
So it's Klimatstudenterna Uppsala.
Yeah.
And then if you're interested in more plant-based foods and food systems, the group that the climate students are working with, that I'm also a coordinator of, is called Plant-Based Universities. So if you're interested in that, look up Plant-Based Universities online to find out more.
That's good. And you also meet every...
We meet here at 4. Yeah, at 4 every Wednesday.
4 every Wednesday
so
in Seamus Library.
At Seamus Library, yes.
Yeah, and you made the video. I haven't been able to make how to actually find Seamus Library.
No, exactly.
So that is also on Instagram. I think
find Seamus Library. Go to our Instagram.
There's an upspeeded 1-minute version of how to actually find the space from the Earth Science entrance. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'm gonna let you in, Azril, into this. If you're still with us, yes, I can see there.
Good. So basically, Studentkåren as a building houses Studentkår, the student board, international students, elevrådet. So it could be a place to gather. The doctoral students also have an association and they meet at Studentkår regularly. So we have, like Semos is one place to meet, a little bit far away. Studentkår could be a logistic place to strategize what we do effectively with different levels, and this is student level. Now, that's one thought. The other one had to do more with intersecting research courses, syllabus, in a transdisciplinary way, like Semos is an example. And that could also bring other student associations which are separate, like the engineering students or the legal students or the medical students, they have their own. So, but we could, in a way, promote, even help to organize such a meeting, ad hoc meeting in Studentkår to address these issues as a building momentum to synergize, to weave together separate efforts.
I think, Azril, we're gonna wrap it up there. I wanted to show you this and show everybody else, and showing things is really not a good format for podcasts and radio, but there is a video recording of all of this as well. And the video conferencing video thing we have is now split the screen in 3 with the TV, and now it's back. So I'll see if this works. So this book arrived last week by Walter Cohan, who was a guest here, which seems really interesting, on Paulo Freire, a philosophical biography. So for those of you close to Seamus, you can also read it here in Seamus Library. Then there was a couple of other books, and we're not going to go through all of them, but I just compiled books that connected to this theme. So that is also here. This is also, I should show the book about and on Seamus, Transcending Boundaries. We're going to do an update of this at some stage. And this has also been shown before, the book you edited, Azril. And this was one of the first books that when I started working at CMS, I think it's from 2004 or something. Planet U, sustaining the world, reinventing the university. So there's a lot of great resources, and I think also international contacts that we can build on for all of this. If you still can hear me, Azril, I have one final thing in all of this. And I didn't really connect with you on this before, but just wanted to mention that as part of this podcast and everything. And it's on a more sadder note, Azril, but your dear friend and Freire colleague, Erik Lindhult, passed away. So we should note that in the podcast, but I don't know, Azril, if you want to say something also about Erik.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Erik Lindhult has been, I would say, an inspiration in the Swedish academic world. He participated in the book that we launched from CEMOS on transformative research and higher education. He was dealing with knowledge democracy, which in a way summarizes his long 30, 40 years contribution to collaborative research, participatory action research, making a bridge between research and teaching and knowledge for the common good, collaborative research. He passed away last Thursday. He tried to be with us in the meeting in Vienna, which is the second podcast, but he didn't succeed. So he leaves a hole, but where we intend to honor his contributions by organizing a meeting and having Zeitgriff, an anthology next year, where I hope CEMOS can be part of. I'm glad that you met Daniel with Erik not so far ago. Thank you. One thing about the book, on the 15th of March, they will print the paperback of the book. So it was an initiative that CEMOS supported very dearly. So it was a very lively dialogue between you and this student activist as a bridge between university and climate activism at the local level. I think we should continue that line of weaving in the future. And yeah, I think it was rich, lively, productive. What can we do from the university constructively to transform the climate situation at the humble local level where the university is located? And I think it's a responsibility to engage the university in this kind of climate, environmental, and everything related to it, including peace, conflict, and health sciences, and natural sciences, and agricultural sciences. And in a way, that is what CEMOS is about, isn't it? But I think those could be my summary words.
Thank you, Azril. And we have one question here from Inés.
Okay, I'd just like to say, to thank you for the initiative, and actually to Renato Pontes, who forwarded your invitation. I think it was Azra's invitation or the CEMA's invitation, I'm not sure. So just because we are here from Brazil, representing PUC-Rio, which is the Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro, where I'm sure lots of things are being done in terms of climate and the Amazon and so on. But the three of us who are here, myself, Maria Isabel Cunha, with whom I work, and our mentor, Dico Wright from the UK, who is very much involved with climate change specifically. but we represent a set of ideas and practices that we have called over the years exploratory practice. And we've been trying to integrate precisely research, teaching, the classroom, the university classroom, the school classroom. And Bebe was reminding me, we got today a few pictures from something a current PhD student of mine is doing with her students in the periphery of Rio de Janeiro, in the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro. And it all started with them I will be brief, don't worry. What's your name? Daniel. They realized by studying in a geography class that their region was simply not on the map. And they were shocked to see that they were not on the map. And so they began to research this and to add themselves. They went out and took pictures and so on and so forth. And they just participated in our 24th annual event at the Catholic University of Rio. And they ran a workshop on this, the fact that they're being ignored, and they had created games and bingos and things and memory games using the pictures that they had been taking of the region, which is a highly polluted region now. It's awful, and so they're trying to work on it. And one of the students gave the idea, why don't we take to the university small plaques that his father is a woodworker, and he made a whole lot of a set of these wood things. And the people at the workshop drew and painted, making claims for people to watch and to preserve the climate and so on. And yesterday they went out to this region and hung these plates on the wood, on the trees and plants and so on. I could show the pictures in 2 minutes if you're interested, but it's just one example of possible. I liked what Azril said about weaving together separate efforts. I think we need to weave together whatever we can. And just to say that we're trying. Renato Pontes, who some of you may know here, we do, and he sent a special message to Azril, does a lot of human rights and all sorts of human. He runs courses. There are such courses at our university in the education department. And I was just checking that the engineering department has apparently a strong research path on climate engineering or something like that. But I was highly interested in what the other student had to say about student activism. I'm not aware that regarding climate change, there is such activism in Rio, but I may be in Akuki, but I may be wrong. I don't know.
So I think we can kind of leave it at that. It's been great having this interview. It's kind of interesting also if you refocus on the practical and visionary, your own kind of brain rewires. That's at least my experience over this hour. In focusing on the possible instead of the impossibilities in history or your personal history in a sense. And thanks everybody listening, and thank you Azril for being patient and have also a safe journey to Sevilla, not Valencia, like I said. And I'll get to the editing and everything. So thanks everybody, and have a safe trip, Azril, and I'll turn off the recording now. Thank you so much.